The gravity that remembers. I remember the first time I felt Earth again. Not saw it, not heard it over a delayed transmission, not watched it as a pale point through a telescope, but felt it, in my bones, in the weight of my own blood dragging inward, as if through the hull and into an invisible horizon. We were 6 million kilometers from home when the floor came back. 1 second I was drifting in the usual awkward ballet of microgravity, toes hooked under a handrail, fingers curled around a tablet. The next, my feet smacked metal with a jarring, familiar impact. My stomach dropped. Loose tools clanged to the deck. A pen that had been floating serenely beside my head knifed downward and stabbed the floorpant first, quivering. For a heartbeat, all I could think was 9.81. Then someone screamed. "Ward, Elias, what the hell did you do?" That would have been Commander Imani Cade, station chief of the Mnemonic outpost, though nobody called it that. To the agencies it was Mnemonic 3, to the press it was the memory station. And to us, the 12 tired people who lived inside its narrow ribs, it was simply the array. But to me, in that moment, it was a miracle. I took 2 unsteady steps, feeling the weight of my body like an old coat I'd left in storage, and laughed. We were moving, all of us, staggering, crying, cursing, giddy and furious at once. Imani was trying to sound like a commander while gripping the edge of a console just to stay upright. "What did you do, Ward?" she repeated, and this time there was more fear than anger. I looked up at the hovering interface of the gravity core, still glowing a calm, ambient blue. Lines of data flowed down its surface in a language that only a handful of people on or off Earth could read. I was one of them. "I turned it on," I said. "My name is Dr. Elias Ward, principal field physicist for the Mnemonic Gravity Project, and if you are hearing this, it means the array is still transmitting. That means you can still be warned. It's important that I explain everything as clearly as I can, because we thought we understood what we were doing. We were wrong." The Mnemonic Gravity Project began, as all nightmares do, with good intentions. By the late 21st century, we understood that long-duration missions killed you slowly. Bones hollowed, hearts weakened, eyes swelled and flattened. Spin gravity helped, but not enough. It made people sick in other ways: Coriolis nausea, inner ear disorientation. People slipped in rotating habitats and never quite trusted their own feet again. We needed gravity without rotation. We needed a way to generate a sustained inertial field without the mass of a planet. Synthetic gravity. If you ask a layperson to imagine it, they picture some magic gravity switch. But gravity isn't a switch. It's geometry, the curvature of spacetime around mass and energy. You can't just turn curvature on. You bend or you don't. Except, as it turned out, you could do something close. When you start pushing on the quantum structure of the vacuum, reality stops being polite. That had been my adult life, chasing the impolite edges of physics, the places where general relativity and quantum mechanics chafed against each other and left bruises in the data. The first breakthroughs came from gravitational interferometry, huge constellations of satellites measuring picometer differences in spacing as gravitational waves passed through. Over years, over decades, the data accumulated. We built maps. Earth's gravitational field, it turned out, wasn't just a static well in spacetime. It was a palimpsest, a layered, dynamic pattern etched by every mass, every movement, every tidal shift, every heartbeat that had ever existed under its sky. It remembered. That was the whisper that turned into mnemosony. If the vacuum could hold the memory of a gravitational field, perhaps that memory could be rewritten. Not a generic pull, but a copy of a specific gravitational environment, encoded and replayed. We called it mnemonic gravity. I worked on the core, the machine at the heart of the array. It floated in its own chamber, a black, matte sphere the size of a crew module, surrounded by supercooled coils and a cage of sensors that would give a god a migraine. Its interior was a labyrinth of superconducting loops and negative permittivity metamaterials arranged in topologies that didn't fit into Euclidean language. It had cost, in real terms, more than several cities. Its job was simple: to imprint and reproduce a gravitational field. We tethered it conceptually to a deep space interferometer parked at one of Earth's Lagrange points, the anchor. The anchor watched Earth, listened to the whisper of its gravity well against the cosmic background, and encoded it as a standing pattern of vacuum fluctuations. The core, in turn, entangled itself with that pattern. That was the theory, anyway. It didn't feel like theory when the floor came back. The first hour after activation was chaos. Alarms blared in every direction. Loose equipment crashed to the decks. One of the hydroponics tanks ruptured when the sudden weight of water pulled it against its mountings and tore a seam. Just like that, over 300 liters of nutrient solution were stratified across the bay, seeping under racks, pooling in low spots like tiny seas. "Shut it down," Imani shouted over the chorus of overlapping warning tones. "I can't." I was already at the core interface, palms spread over its haptic surface. "The field's stabilizing. If we hardcut now, we'll get a rebound." "We've trained for rebound events," she snapped. "Yes, we've trained for them at 0.3G, not 9.8. My voice cracked on the last word. I felt lightheaded and heavy at once. My heart was pounding harder under the familiar load. "We could snap the whole frame. Give me 5 minutes, just 5. Imani glared at me, then at the drifting, gradually falling clouds of condensation in the air. They were drooping, uncertain, as if they hadn't decided whether to obey this new direction yet. 5, she said, and vanished toward life support at an awkward run. The core's diagnostics looked good. Perfect, actually. Too perfect. The field intensity in the station's Hab ring was exactly 1G, plus or minus a fraction. There was some expected gradient near the junctions, where the field died off toward the central spine, but nothing catastrophic. Outside, the station's orbit remained stable. The core's field didn't extend beyond our hull. Good. In theory, dinking about with gravity inside your own station shouldn't nudge your orbit around Jupiter one way or another, but with this much energy in play, in theory, always sounded thin. I forced myself to breathe, to focus, to read the data instead of letting my body's confused relief drown me. My feet were flat on the deck. I could feel the subtle pressure of my boots against my toes. My knees ached. Tears pricked the corners of my eyes for no rational reason. "We'd done it." Elia's, a voice behind me, Sierra, our medic. Her cheeks were wet too, but not with triumph. "One of the botanists broke his arm when the tank went. Slip and impact. I need to know if this is permanent." I hesitated. Then I lied. "It's working nominally. Nothing's caught fire. That's a good sign." "That's not an answer," she said, but there was no real accusation in it. We both knew what we'd signed up for, coming this far from Earth. When you volunteered for a frontier physics project in deep space, you accepted certain uncertainties. She left, boots ringing on the deck. The sound made something deep in my chest ache, like hearing the echo of a childhood staircase. I watched the numbers for another 30 minutes. The station hummed with a new set of noises. Creaks of metal adjusting to load-bearing rolls it hadn't played since leaving the slip, muttered curses as people relearned balance, the hypnotic drip of water from the ruptured tank. Gravity made everything louder. Eventually, Imani called on the station loop. "All personnel, this is Commander Cade. Mnemonic gravity generation is currently at 1 Earth G and stable. We will maintain the field for a controlled 12-hour trial window, after which Dr. Ward will begin throttling procedures. You will all receive revised safety protocols in your personal queues. In the meantime, move cautiously, secure all equipment and report any anomalies to physics. And I don't need to remind you how significant this is. Congratulations." Try not to fall on your faces. A round of ragged laughter answered her. 12 hours. It seemed reasonable. It was more than enough time for the array to change forever. The first anomalies were small. We were 3 hours into the trial when I dropped a mug, and it fell sideways. It was in the rec module, during the kind of scheduled downtime bonding that command psychology officers loved and actual human beings tolerated. Someone had dug out an ancient board game from one of the personal storage lockers, all cardboard tiles and little cylindrical pieces. We were passing around a pot of awful instant coffee made special for the occasion. "Elias, you're hogging the sugar," muttered Tran, our software lead, as he nudged me with his elbow. "You don't need sugar," I said. "You need sleep, which you're not getting if you keep rewriting core safety interlocks at 3 in the morning station time." "You told me you wanted the field collapse protocols decoupled from main power," he replied. "That takes work." 2 others were arguing over the rules. Sierra, her arm splinted from the earlier incident, was watching with bemused detachment. Imani lurked at the edge, pretending to read a report. I lifted the mug in a half-hearted toast to the miracle of feeling like my organs are in the right place again. Sierra snorted, to torn ligaments and slipped discs. I started to say something, gestured, and my fingers went slack. The mug slipped. I watched it fall. Except it didn't fall, not like it should have. Instead of dropping straight down to the deck, it slid as if the local down had yawed a few degrees to the left. It arced in a smooth, impossible curve, smacked into the wall at knee height and shattered. Coffee splashed sideways. For a moment, all of us just stared. "Did you see?" Tran began. "Local fluctuation," I said too quickly. "Transient, the core is still calibrating, it's normal." Imani straightened from her corner. "Normal. Small deviations in field orientation as the core settles into its resonance with the anchor," I improvised. "We always knew we'd see some micro-anomalies in the first 24 hours. It's in the paper." "The paper," Tran repeated dryly. "You mean the one that got you into all this trouble in the first place?" I ignored him. I was already pulling up a localized gravity map on my wrist display, fingers trembling. The map showed the station's hab ring as a tilted torus, color-coded by field intensity and orientation. A tiny arrow pointed down in each section, all neatly inward, normal as expected. No sideways. Still, I saw what I saw. We all did. The coffee continued to drip down the wall, obeying the current version of gravity. "Clean it up," Imani said eventually. "And log it, Ward. Every single normal glitch I want logged." I logged it. I didn't sleep much. The dream started that night. I was standing on a street I'd never seen before, under a sky that felt like Earth, not in any one detail, but in the total crush of sensation I hadn't realized I missed. The air tasted wrong in exactly the right way, thick with humidity and human exhale, with hot grease and distant rain, with the layered, unwashed chemistry of millions of lives. People moved around me in great, drifting flocks. They weren't clear, not in the way of mundane dream people. These were partially occluded, as if someone had taken real humans and dialed their opacity down until I could see the crowd and the city bleeding through each other at once. They brushed past me without touching. Their footsteps shook the ground. Every time one passed close, I felt a tiny surge of weight, a tug on my bones. I tried to look at their faces, but they were always just turned away, or blurred in motion, or lost behind someone else. The street sloped downward toward a river, lights stitched along the water. I knew somehow that this city wasn't mine. I had grown up in a Midwestern town 200 kilometers from the ocean, with cornfields and low, patient hills. Yet I knew this place in the way you know a word you've never spoken. I knew its gravity. I woke with my heart racing and my muscles sore, as if I'd spent the night hiking under a full pack instead of strapped to a bunk. Across the hab, someone else murmured in their sleep. A second later, I heard a muffled cry. Sierra's voice from the next compartment. No, please. Then a thump, a curse, the creak of a bunk under sudden weight. I unstrapped clumsily, forgetting for a moment that I no longer floated. My feet hit the deck with a grunt. By the time I reached Sierra's cabin, her door was already open. She sat on the edge of her bunk, breathing hard, dark hair clinging damply to her forehead. Commander Cade stood in the doorway, one hand on the jamb. "You too?" Imani asked without preamble, eyes flicking to me. "Street, city, people," I said before my brain could filter it. "The river, lights." Sierra looked up sharply. "You had it as well." "Yes," I said. "All of you?" Imani asked quietly. It turned out in the mess that 8 of the 12 crew had dreamed variations on the same thing. Some remembered more detail, a specific smell of curry and ozone, the exact glow of a neon sign in an alphabet they didn't know how to read but recognized as real. One had stood on a balcony instead of the street. Another had sat on a bench watching crowds that never parted around them. But the core was the same. A city not their own, filled with people like shadows, pressing down on them with the weight of their steps. "Mass psychogenic response," suggested Kirov, our comms specialist. He had a gift for turning human experience into clinical phrases. "We're all processing the activation. Gravity back in our bodies, so gravity back in our dreams." "Shared dreams with overlapping content," Sierra said. "That's more than just processing." Imani looked at me. "Is there any reason the core could be stimulating the brain directly?" "No," I said. Then, because that felt insufficient, "nothing in the design interacts with neural tissue. This is field geometry at the macroscopic level." "But you did say the core is entangled with the anchor," Tran mused. "And the anchor is watching Earth. That city could be real." "Even if it is," I said, "we shouldn't be seeing it." "Maybe Earth is calling us home," Kirov joked. No one laughed. "Log it," Imani said again. "Everything goes into the log, and Elias." "Yes." "You start looking for a cause. I know you love this project, but I'm not going to have my crew sleepwalking into airlocks because they're dreaming of some goddamn riverwalk." I promised her I would. I meant it. On day 3, the dead joined us. It happened in the greenhouse. The rupture from the first hour had been patched. Temporary braces held the damaged tank while fabrication printed a new mount. Moisture still slicked the floor plates in thin, treacherous films. Sierra had cautioned everyone to move slowly, especially under the new gravity. Ligaments and reflexes tuned for micro-G didn't adjust overnight. I was there to help repair a sensor bank. The plants, mostly leafy greens and dwarf fruit trees, seemed to be enjoying the change. Their stems stood a little straighter. Droplets clung to the undersides of leaves like tiny worlds. "Feels more like an actual greenhouse now," muttered Jin, one of the botanists, "instead of a zero-G salad coffin." "Watch your step," Sierra warned, glancing down at the slick deck. "I'm fine," Jin said. He was young, one of the few on board under 30, with the perennial carelessness of people who'd never broken anything important. He reached for a handhold, misjudged the distance, weight and momentum still alien to his muscles, and slipped. He didn't fall straight down. His foot skidded sideways in a direction that made no sense relative to the floor. His body followed that false vector, twisting. For a split second, I saw his shadow tilt in one direction while his actual body went another. Then he hit the deck with a wet crack. He screamed, high and animal. Sierra was on him in an instant. I scrambled forward, my own boots sliding against the sudden shift. "What happened?" I gasped. "Jin, are you?" His lower leg was wrong. Even at a glance, I could see the bone had snapped above the ankle, angling the foot inward at an impossible angle. The skin bulged. "Fracture," Sierra said, voice clipped with focus. "Compound, help me stabilize." As we worked, Jin sobbed, gripping my forearm with white-knuckled fingers. "It pulled me," he gasped. "It pulled." "Who pulled?" I asked, barely listening as I cradled his calf. "Not who," he whispered. "Where?" Later, after Sierra had taken him to Med, and the greenhouse had been cordoned off, I went back with a portable gravimeter. The instrument was simple, a cluster of ultra-sensitive accelerometers in a handheld shell. It measured tiny changes in local gravitational acceleration and direction, the sort of thing that should only twitch in the sixth decimal place when you waved it around a station like ours. In the greenhouse, it jittered and swung like a compass at the North Pole. Every step shifted the readings. They weren't random either. They pulled and tugged in particular patterns, like invisible pathways running through the air. In one corner near the ruptured tank, the meter's vector arrow dipped sharply down and to the right against the deck. I followed that invisible slope, one unsteady step at a time, until I reached the wall. The pull continued through it. On the other side of that bulkhead was empty space. I pressed my palm to the metal, feeling nothing but cold. The meter tugged and jerked in my other hand, insistently pointing through the hull, through the void, toward nothing I could name. "Elias." I turned. It was Sierra. Her eyes were shadowed. She'd cleaned Jin up and set his leg. He was sedated in Med, a pale weight in a ship that had learned weight again. "Is he okay?" I asked. "He will be unless your toy tears us all to pieces first," she said. Then more gently, "Grade 3 fracture, lots of soft tissue damage. The weird thing is the bruising." "Weird how?" She hesitated. "His thigh, the marks, they look like fingerprints." I stared at her. "He hit the deck, the tank. Maybe he grabbed something." "I thought so too," she said. "But the pattern, there are indentations on the flesh, like something squeezed him while he fell, from a different angle than the impact. And he said it pulled him," I finished. "Yes." We both looked at the meter, its arrow still stubbornly pointing through the wall. "Do you remember your dream?" I asked her quietly. She closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, there was a brittle sheen there. "I was in a market. My grandmother used to take me to one like it when I was small, but this wasn't the same place. Similar layout, different smells. Everything was more. People brushed past me, but none of them touched. And there was this sense that if one of them did touch, if they actually touched me, I would wake up with my bones powdered." "That's melodramatic," I said, because the alternative was screaming. "Yeah," she said, "I know." We stood there in the greenhouse, with our plants and our injured crewmen and the invisible slope in the air. "That thing," she added, nodding at the Corps' icon still present on the local display, a little blue sphere. "Could it be hooking us into something?" I thought of the anchor, millions of kilometers away, still watching Earth's gravitational field. I thought of decades of interferometric data, of the realization that a planet's gravity wasn't a monotone hum, but a vast, intricate song encoding every moving mass in its embrace. "Gravity remembers," my old mentor had said back before the array, back before Mnemonic was more than a thought experiment. You can think of it that way, Ward. Every orbit, every wave, every step, it all leaves its trace in the curvature. The universe keeps books. "We imprinted Earth's field," I said slowly. "Not just its average strength, its structure, its inhomogeneities, the fine-grained stuff." "And that means what?" Sierra pressed. "It means this station is now immersed in a copy of Earth's gravitational fingerprint. As if Earth's mass distribution is here, superimposed, mathematically. Mathematically. In the core, in the vacuum around it. It doesn't mean there's actually a planet outside." "But Jin didn't trip over math," she snapped. I looked back at the wall, at the invisible vector that had yanked a human body sideways. "No," I admitted, "he didn't." The Corps' deeper diagnostics took hours to parse. Tran and I sat in the cramped physics bay, bathed in the cold glow of 3 overlapping holofeeds, while the station hummed and creaked around us. We pulled up the field map, this time not the simple, cartoonish torus for command briefings, but the full tensor representation. Every point in the Hab ring filled with interlocking arrows, twisting and bending through four-dimensional space. The sheer volume of data made my eyes ache. "See that?" Tran said, highlighting a cluster of vectors in heat map red. "These micro-anomalies, they're not random noise. They formed when we bend them over time, something like filaments. Threads, weaving through the station's volume from one module to another, bending around bulkheads, curving through sleep pods and workspaces and corridors. Invisible lines of slightly altered gravity, just enough to nudge a falling mug, a slipping foot." "Pathways," I whispered. "High-traffic zones," Tran agreed. "Whatever the core is replaying, we're sitting in the middle of someone else's traffic patterns." "Someone else's," I echoed. We overlaid our station's blueprint. The filaments didn't care about our walls. They flowed through the volume according to a topology that had nothing to do with Mnemonics geometry. "Scale it up," I said. He did. The map zoomed out, the station shrinking to a point in a vast abstract space. The filaments stretched, extended, took on more shape. With enough imagination, I could see a city there. Streets and subways, stairwells and plazas, all reduced to lines of enhanced curvature in a four-dimensional manifold. Earth's field, whispering its structure into our house. Gravity remembers. But it remembers everything. Not just buildings and rivers and mountains, not just oceans, tides, and convective currents. It remembers us. I thought of all the mass humanity had added to Earth's surface. Our bodies, our possessions, our skyscrapers and graveyards. Every person was a small but distinct perturbation, a knot in the tapestry. Over time, those knots moved, walked, lay down, got up, lay down again forever. The core had imprinted that entire pattern, a vast summation of mass movements over centuries. What we had invited into our ship was not just Earth gravity. It was the map of every step anyone had ever taken. "Run a comparison," I said hoarsely. "Take a sample window from the anchor's last Earth scan, overlay it on the current core field." "It's already done," Tran said. "I started it when you were in the greenhouse." The overlap was not perfect, but close. Too close. There were differences, of course. We were sampling the anchor's real-time feed as Earth's current field continued to evolve, while the core preserved some earlier imprint. But the underlying pattern was the same. We weren't generating a generic gravity field. We were reproducing Earth's. All of it. "I think," I said, swallowing, "we may have misunderstood what synthetic gravity means." Tran stared at the red filaments. "Do you want the good news or the bad news?" he asked. I laughed, a short, hysterical bark. "Is there good news?" "The field is stable," he said. "Core output is within design parameters. If we turn it off now, we should be able to ramp down without blowing the station apart." "And the bad news?" He gestured at the map. "I don't think we can turn it off entirely." "Explain." "The core has achieved resonance with the anchor," he said. "That's the whole point. It's no longer an active generator in the simple sense, it's a conduit. The anchor is imprinted on the vacuum, the core mirrors that imprint here. If we pull the plug, we break the synchronization, but the local distortion," he shrugged helplessly. "Warped spacetime doesn't just snap back, it relaxes, over time, maybe a long time." "How long?" I pressed. He tried to bring up the model, but the simulation returned an error. Too many variables, not enough data. "Could be hours," he said, "could be years." I stared at the glowing lines, at the phantom streets that stitched through our home. "Imani is going to love this," I muttered. On day 5, we saw the first shadow. It was Kirov who screamed. That alone was wrong. He'd been ice-white calm during micrometeorite strikes and comms blackouts. His voice, cracking over the station loop, sounded human in a way I'd never heard from him. Physics med anyone greenhouse now. We ran. In one corner of the greenhouse, near the patch tank and the invisible slope in the air, Kirov stood pressed against the far wall, his face ashen. His eyes were focused on a patch of empty space in the center of the room. Except it wasn't empty. It's hard to put into words afterward because my brain keeps trying to smear it into something normal. But at the time, standing there with my lungs burning and my heart hammering weightfully in my chest, what I saw was this. There was a dimming, not of light, no obvious shadows, nothing that would show up trivially on a camera, but of attention. My eyes wanted to slide off that patch to refuse to process it, and yet I could not stop looking. The air itself seemed slightly wrong, like a pane of thick glass hung in emptiness. Behind it, the greenhouse was subtly distorted. And overlaid on that distortion, moving along an invisible path, was an absence shaped like a person. Not a full silhouette, more like the suggestion of one, a narrowing, a warping, as if spacetime itself was bending around something that wasn't quite there. Every time it shifted its weight, if that's what it was doing, the deck plates around it groaned softly as if bearing a load. Plants leaned toward it as it passed, their stems bending under a breeze that didn't exist. "What is that?" I whispered. "It walked through me," Kirov said, voice trembling. "I was just checking Jin's nutrient drip, and then I felt the crowd like in the dreams, and then it was in front of me, and then it walked through me." Sira, standing beside me, swallowed audibly. "Did it hurt?" "No," he said immediately. Then, after a moment, "Not physically. It was cold, heavy, like being at the bottom of a pool." His hand shook as he lifted it. "It didn't even notice me, I think." The absence continued along its path, oblivious, until it reached the bulkhead. Then it kept going, vanishing through the wall following the same vector as the invisible slope I'd traced with the meter. "It's following the filament," Tran said quietly. He had arrived just behind us, breathless. I realized I was holding the gravimeter again. Its arrow spun wildly, then locked onto the path the thing had taken. The local acceleration increased fractionally as it passed, hardly enough to feel, but enough to register. "Did anyone else see it?" I asked. They nodded one by one. Sira, Tran, Imani, who had arrived silent and wide-eyed, Jin, hobbling on crutches in the doorway despite Sira's protests. All of them had the same look, the sharp, brittle terror of people whose reality has been edited without their consent. "That's impossible," I said, because some part of me still believed that naming impossibility could banish it. "Define impossible," Tran muttered. "It's a lensing artifact," I said, "a visual distortion caused by microfluctuations in the field. Our eyes and brains aren't designed to interpret four-dimensional curvature. We're seeing a projection." "Of what?" Sira demanded. I didn't answer. Because in that moment, as the absence walked through the wall and the room exhaled around us, another thought had come unbidden. It walks like someone carrying groceries, one shoulder lower than the other, slight limp in the left leg. I had never met whoever that absence used to be, but Earth had. Gravity remembers. That night no one slept well. When I did doze, exhausted, I dreamed again of the city. But this time the dream was different. The crowd was thicker. Their outlines were sharper, and through them, like ghosts of ghosts, I saw other places. A hill with a swing set, a hospital corridor, a kitchen with a chipped yellow table. They were layered on top of the street, different gravitational scenes superimposed. Every step I took felt like sinking through sedimentary memories. And among the faceless masses, there was one face I recognized. She stood on the opposite side of the street, just beyond the invisible current of the crowd. My sister, Maya, exactly as she had been in the last photograph I had of her. Hair twisted into a messy knot, laugh lines at the corners of her mouth, eyes creased with sunlight. She had been dead for 12 years. Cancer, not an exciting death, not a heroic one, just cells forgetting how to stop. I had been on my first orbital posting when she faded, sending her messages she was too weak to answer. Now she stood there, across the street that was not a street, in a city that was not a city, in a dream that was not a dream. Maya, I tried to say, but the word came out as a weight on my tongue. She didn't look at me. Her gaze skated past, focusing on something I couldn't see. People moved through her, distorting her outline. Every time someone's invisible shoulder intersected her invisible chest, I felt a little jolt in my bones. The strange thing was, I had no doubt that what I was seeing corresponded to something real. Not her soul, nothing so cozy, but the pattern of her existence, encoded in the way her body had once weighed on Earth. The paths she had walked, the places she had slept, all recorded in that vast gravitational ledger, which the core now replayed for us like a haunting. I woke with tears on my face, and the certainty that I was not, in any meaningful human way, awake. More shadows appeared in the following days. They were rarely as clear as the first one. Often it was only a shift in the air, a slight distortion where the gravimeter spiked. Once, in the narrow corridor by the hygiene pod, I felt the unmistakable sensation of someone brushing past my shoulder, and the meter snapped to a different vector for half a second. Sometimes we all saw them at once. Other times one person would freeze, eyes locked on empty space, while the rest of us saw nothing. In those cases, the meter still registered a change. "Why can I see that one but you can't?" Sierra demanded, after she had screamed and flattened herself against a bulkhead while the rest of us stared at nothing. "We're not seeing them with our eyes," I said. "Not really. Our brains are interpreting the way the field is bending. Slight differences in perception could mean slight differences in threshold." "That's not an answer," she said. "What do you want me to say? That we're haunted?" Her jaw clenched. "By whose ghosts ward?" It was a good question. At first the shapes were neutral, anonymous. They walked through our station along their own forgotten routes, ignoring us. But gradually, inevitably, they began to intersect with our own memories. Tran glimpsed his father once, or the gravitational echo of the man who had shaped his life by leaving when he was 5. Kirov smelled his childhood apartment stairwell, the sour mix of cat piss and cheap detergent, as a shadow trudged past in the junction between modules. And all of us, at one point or another, felt the presence of the dead we didn't know. The global majority whose lives had never touched ours directly, but whose mass had still contributed to Earth's field. The core did not discriminate. It had imprinted everything. We were living inside a copy of humanity's collective weight. Meanwhile, the field continued its subtle deviations. Mugs fell sideways more often. Papers slid across tables toward invisible slopes. Our muscles ached in strange patterns, as if we were constantly bracing against forces no one else could see. "Can we leave?" Jin asked, pale and shaky on his crutches. "We have the shuttle. We could ride out of range." "A shuttle can't outrun spacetime," Tran said flatly. "The station's orbit," I began, "is still around Jupiter," Imani finished. "For now, but what about our bodies?" She brought up a regional gravity map on the main command screen, expanded the view to include the station and the space around it. The field around Mnemonic showed a small but undeniable distortion, extending a few dozen meters beyond the hull. A dimple in spacetime where there should have been nothing but the faint tug of the distant gas giant. "We're carrying the imprint with us," she said, "like a bubble." "How far does it extend?" Jin asked. "A little beyond the station now," I said. "But if Tran's right about relaxation, it could spread, or concentrate, we don't know." "To where?" he pressed. "How far can Earth's gravity reach if we're copying it here?" "In principle," I said, "forever." Silence settled over the command deck, heavy as the ghosts in the greenhouse. "Can we shut it down?" Imani asked quietly. "We can decouple the core from the anchor," Tran said. "Stop it from updating." "But the imprint it's already established won't vanish instantly," I added. It will linger. For how long? She repeated. Years, I said. Decades, maybe longer. We have no analog for this. We've never intentionally warped a local patch of spacetime like this before and then tried to unwind it. So either we keep the connection and keep updating our little ghost of Earth, she summarized, or we cut it and live with whatever residue we've already invited in. Yes. And the third option? Sierra asked. We all looked at her. We ride it out, she said. We stay connected. We accept that our station is now partially overlaid with Earth's gravity, and we learn to live in the crowd. We build procedures, we avoid the heavy paths, we learn where the shadows are. You want us to coexist with 8 billion dead, Jin said faintly. They're not dead, I said. Not all of them. The anchor is watching real-time Earth. These imprints include the living. That's worse, Sierra snapped. You want to live inside a projection of the entire planet's weight. Every living step, every sleeping body, every corpse in every graveyard. Do you want to wake up every night to the feeling of someone lying in your bunk who died 50 years ago? No one answered. The spine of the station creaked softly, redistributing load. Finally, Imani sighed. Cut the connection, she said. Shut down the core, or as close to shut down as we can get. Tran glanced at me. I nodded, though my stomach clenched. We went to work. Shutting down a machine like the core wasn't a matter of flipping a switch. It was a ritual, a choreography of changes to field configurations and cooling gradients, carefully staged to avoid catastrophic spikes. We had rehearsed the procedure in simulation hundreds of times. Reality had not, apparently, read our scripts. When we began decoupling the core from the anchor, we felt it immediately, a lurch like elevator drop. The artificial gravity didn't vanish, but it shuddered. The station groaned. Somewhere, something heavy fell and someone cursed. Steady, Imani said over the loop, voice strained. Everyone brace. Emergency harnesses on. In the physics bay, the core's spherical shell darkened from blue to a deep, unsettling black. The temperature gradients on the readouts shifted. Our local field map flickered, filaments brightening and dimming. We're getting a rebound, Tran said through clenched teeth. Just like you said, the field is trying to re-equilibrate without the anchor. Dial the output down manually, I said. Reduce the amplitude of the imprint. If I cut it too fast. Then don't cut it, bend it, spread it. He did. The core's control surfaces responded sluggishly, as if moving through syrup. The resonance with the anchor was breaking, but the pattern it had established in our local vacuum resisted change. It was like trying to erase a painting by smearing its pigments instead of washing them away. The colors remained, just redistributed. The filaments stretched, thinned, tangled. The local anomalies in Hab space multiplied. Where there had been clear streets before, there were now webs. And through those webs the shadows moved. They came in numbers we had never seen. Not single absences now, but clusters, swarms of distortion flickering through our corridors, our labs, our bunks. The station groaned under waves of infinitesimal load changes, a continual low tide of other places and other feet. Sierra screamed once over the loop, a short, bitten-off sound, then cursed. Jin cried out that something was sitting on his chest. Kirov babbled in Russian, then English, then Russian again, describing his childhood hallway as he crawled through the comms module which suddenly didn't match its own shape. I felt them too. On my way from the core chamber to Med to check on Jin, the corridor elongated. Not physically, its measured length remained the same, but my body insisted it was longer. My steps fell into some deeper rhythm than my own reflexes, as if I were following someone else's habit. Halfway down, I walked into a wall that wasn't there. The impact was real. My nose exploded with pain. I staggered back, clutching my face, staring at the empty air in front of me. The gravimeter on my belt shrieked, its arrow whipping around to point straight ahead, then straight down, then straight up. For a dizzying second, I was simultaneously in the array's corridor and in a stairwell somewhere on Earth. The air smelled of damp concrete and mold. My hand found a ghostly railing. Someone shouldered past me, and the pressure of their invisible body against mine shoved me back into my own life. I fell to my knees on Mnemonic's deck, blood dripping between my fingers. "Ward Elias," Imani's voice crackled over the loop. "Report." "I'm fine," I lied, spitting red. "Field is thrashing. We need to stabilize at whatever new baseline we can reach." "Do it." We did. Hours later, when the last of the wild fluctuations had subsided, and the core's readings settled into a messy but static pattern, we took stock. The artificial gravity was still there. We could still walk, still drop mugs, still bruise ourselves when we hit things, but the field was different now, less uniform, more textured. The filaments of enhanced curvature were everywhere, not just in discrete streets. The shadows, the absences, moved constantly, flickering at the edge of perception. And yet, for all that, the total field intensity remained close to 1G. "It's like living on a planet made of ghosts," Jin whispered. No one argued. We lost the first crew member 2 days after decoupling. Officially, blame would fall on equipment failure. Unofficially, all of us knew what had really happened, even if we couldn't frame it in words that would satisfy a safety report. His name was Ortega, systems engineer, mid-40s, quiet, competent, fond of old paperbacks and bad puns. He died in the maintenance shaft between the life support module and the power spine. He went in to inspect a stuck airflow valve. He didn't come out. We found him an hour later when he missed a check-in and didn't answer pings. The maintenance shaft was cramped, a vertical tunnel threaded with pipes and conduits. Under gravity, climbing it was an awkward combination of ladder work and contortion. Ortega lay at the bottom, twisted in an angle that made my stomach lurch. Not from the fall. The drop was only 4 meters and the impact damage, while severe, didn't match the rest. It was as if he had been squeezed. His ribs were shattered inward. His spine was compressed. There were bruises on his arms and torso in patterns we were all becoming grimly familiar with, oval marks in clusters, like fingerprints blown up to monstrous scale. His face was frozen in a rictus of confusion more than pain, as if he had never fully understood what was happening. "It's as if something walked through him," Sierra said hoarsely, kneeling beside the body. "Is this going in the official cause of death?" Kirov asked, voice thin. "No," Imani said sharply. "Officially, systems engineer Ortega died due to a fall and subsequent equipment impact in a maintenance shaft during gravity anomalies. That's what we tell Earth. That's what his family hears." "And unofficially?" Jin asked. "Unofficially," Imani said, her voice cracking for the first time, "we live in a haunted machine." We held a short, awkward ceremony in the greenhouse. It seemed appropriate somehow to mark his absence in the place where the absences were thickest. Afterward, alone, I went back to the maintenance shaft with the gravimeter. The device screamed before I even reached the ladder. The shaft was full. Not of bodies, not in any way that would show up on video, but of paths. The filaments there had knotted, twisted into a snarl. Every centimeter was heavy with invisible traffic. My skin prickled. My bones ached. It was like standing in a crowded subway tunnel an instant before the doors opened. For a moment I thought I heard voices. Not Ortega's. He was as silent as any dead. But the murmur of thousands of other lives passing through that same vertical slice of spacetime, in other places, other worlds. I stumbled back, gasping. The core had imprinted Earth's gravity. We had decoupled it, smeared it, trapped it here with us. And in doing so, we had taken on a burden I was not sure any human structure could bear. Because gravity does not just remember where the living stand. It remembers where the dead lie. Every graveyard, every mass grave, Every hospital bed where someone took their last breath, all of it encoded in the way Earth's mass curved spacetime. We had dragged that memory out here, to the lonely orbit of Jupiter. And now, the dead were walking through us on their way to nowhere. You might ask at this point why we didn't simply leave. The answer is we tried. The shuttle, the Ariadne, hung at the array's docking ring like a lifeboat, sleek and white against Mnemonic's skeletal ribs. Designed for round trips between the station and the anchor, it had enough delta-V to reach Earth orbit in an emergency, at the cost of burning most of its reserves. Imani convened us in command, outlined the options with the flat calm of someone who had rehearsed them in her head 100 times. Option 1, we stay, she said. We continue to study the field, we send our findings to Earth, we learn to live with this. Risk, we die here, slowly or not so slowly. Option 2, Jin asked. We evacuate to the Ariadne, she said. We take essentials, food, water, data cores, and we try to reach the anchor. From there, maybe Earth sends a rescue mission, or we slingshot home. Will the field follow us? Kirov asked. Tran brought up a model of the core's current configuration. The imprint bubble extended around the station in a fuzzy halo. The shuttle, docked to the ring, sat fully inside it. If we leave slowly, he said, we can maybe slip out of the bubble's highest intensity zone. The field falls off with distance. But not to zero, I insisted. The imprint isn't localized to the core anymore. It's smeared into the surrounding vacuum. We are the center but not the boundaries. You're saying it's attached to us, Imani said. I'm saying it's attached to this patch of spacetime, I corrected, where the station is. If we move fast enough, perhaps we could outpace it, but we don't have fast enough. The shuttle was built for orbital maneuvers, not relativistic gambits. And if we leave anyway, Sira asked quietly. Then we bring it with us, I said. The bubble may deform, stretch, but unless we somehow punch out of the local distortion entirely. Which we can't, Tran added. Which we can't, I agreed. There was a long silence. So either we stay in a haunted house, Jin said, or we turn the lifeboat into a haunted coffin. Put it that way and no one will vote for option 2, Kirov muttered. Who said you get a vote? Imani snapped, then sighed. Sorry, that was uncalled for. We did vote because we were still human, and that's what humans do when the universe stops making sense. They take attendance. The tally was 7-5 in favor of staying. I don't know if it was courage, inertia, or the irrational sense that the station was ours, that we had a moral duty to understand the thing we had summoned instead of abandoning it to drift. In the end, it didn't matter. The Ariadne made the choice for us. 3 days later, in the middle of a routine systems check, her guidance computer reported a critical fault. It's refusing to accept inertial reference, Tran said incredulously, tapping through a series of error codes. It insists it's already in free fall around a massive body. We're in orbit around Jupiter, Imani said. That's true enough. No, Tran said, around Earth. He brought up the guidance system's internal model. The ship's software believed it was sitting in low Earth orbit, skimming the edge of the atmosphere. Its attitude controls quietly fired every few seconds, making invisible corrections to maintain that illusory orbit. From the shuttle's perspective, we had never left home. Can you reset it? Sira asked. I have 3 times, he said. Wiped, reflashed, hard-seated the ephemeris. Every time when it reboots, it sinks to the same false orbit. With what? I asked slowly. He hesitated. With the local gravitational field, he said. The core broke our instruments, Elias. It taught them to listen to something that's not here. A chill settled over me that had nothing to do with temperature. If even our machines believed in the ghost of Earth, what hope did we have? The dreams got worse. At first they had been limited to that one city, that one crowded street. After we decoupled, After Ortega died and the Ariadne lost its bearings, the dream spread. Sometimes I walked through my childhood town, streets I knew intimately, but there were new layers. A hospital wing that had never existed, a row of high-rises where the fields should have been. The gravitational memories of those places overlapped, arguing about what shape reality should take. Other nights I found myself on a hillside cemetery, rows of stones marching under a gray sky. Each grave weighed on the earth in its own small way. In the dream, I could feel the mass of each coffin, each body like beads on a string, pulling slightly on my bones. And always, amid the strangers, the dead I loved watched me without seeing me. Maya on that unreal city street. My mother, sitting at the chipped kitchen table, her elbow leaving a dent in the tablecloth that echoed down the years. A professor from my early career, gesturing at a chalkboard in an empty lecture hall that shared space with the array's physics bay. I woke from these dreams aching, my muscles sore, my joints stiff. Once, I found bruises on my arms in the shape of fingers that were too large to be human. "You're sleepwalking," Sira said when I showed her, "or sleep-hitting something, under gravity we're not used to." "I'm strapped into my bunk," I said. She looked at the bruises and didn't argue. Others had their own stories. Jin dreamed of a playground that glitched into an industrial yard mid-swing. Kirov woke with the taste of cheap cigarettes in his mouth, though no one on board smoked. Tran spent an entire night in a crowded subway train that never arrived at a station, feeling the press of invisible shoulders against his. And through it all, the shadows in the station grew bolder. They never quite interacted with us, not directly, not the way Ortega had been crushed. That had been an intersection, a coincidence of paths. But they came closer more often. They walked through walls, through bulkheads, through us. Sometimes, if they passed directly through a person, that person would gasp, shudder, and later describe a sudden intrusive memory of a life they knew wasn't theirs. "I was in a kitchen, chopping onions," Sira said once, staring at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. "There was a radio playing, a dog barking outside, and then I was here again." "That doesn't sound so bad," Jin said. "It wasn't," she agreed quietly. "That's what scares me." Because the worst part wasn't the fear, it was the longing. There were moments, fleeting but real, when the ghosts of gravity felt like company. Standing in the greenhouse, surrounded by flickering absences, I would feel less alone than I had since leaving Earth. 8 billion dead, 8 billion living, all of them sharing this invisible weight with me. The array had been built to end the isolation of space, to bring Earth's gravity to the stars. In a way, it had succeeded. Too well. We lost 3 more crew in the weeks that followed. Accidents officially. A snapped tether during an external inspection that sent a body tumbling not into open space, but into a corridor that wasn't there. A fall in the central spine during a field spike. A depressurization event in a storage module that, according to the logs, had never actually lost pressure. Each death came with the same signs. Impossible geometry, bruises that looked like fingerprints, a sense that someone had been in the wrong place at the wrong time in more than one reality at once. We sent every scrap of data to Earth, compressed and time-stamped, dumped into laser bursts toward the anchor. Sometimes we got responses, delayed, cautious, full of questions we had already asked ourselves. More often, the line was silent. We were too far, moving too fast around a planet that was not our own, drifting in a bubble of misremembered gravity. "Maybe they don't know what to say," Jin suggested once, as we watched the transmission queue spool down. "What would you tell us if you were them?" "Turn it off and come home," Sira said bitterly. "Gravity remembers," I said. "Even if we could turn it off completely, the universe doesn't forget. We carved a scar into space-time. There is no home the way there was before." "Comforting," Kirov muttered. Only Amani remained steady, at least on the surface. She maintained routines, enforced sleep cycles, insisted that we keep doing our jobs. "We are scientists," she told us. "We are explorers. We don't get to flinch because the universe is stranger than we hoped. Our duty now is to witness." "To die documenting it," Jin said. "If we must," she said without dramatics. Watching her, I wondered who she saw in the crowd when she closed her eyes. This brings me to the present, to the reason I am recording this, speaking into the log with my voice raw and my chest tight, knowing that soon even this may be swallowed by the weight we have summoned. Tonight, if night still has meaning on a station where Earth's day-night cycle is only a faint echo in our hormonal rhythms, something changed. It began, as so many things do, in a dream. Except this time, I'm not entirely sure I was asleep. I was in the city again. The same pseudo-street, the same river, the same crowds, but there were no faceless strangers now. Every person I saw had a face I recognized, either from my own life or from my crewmates' stories. Maya, my mother. Ortega, alive again, walking with a toolbox in hand, whistling off-key. They moved along their paths, unaware of me, intersecting and overlapping in impossible ways. Ortega walked straight through my mother's kitchen table and out the far wall. Maya stood on the riverbank and watched a funeral procession pass through her like mist. Overhead, the sky flickered. For an instant, I saw the array's interior instead, the metal ribs, the cables, the core's chamber. The city and the station fought for dominance. "Gravity remembers," a voice whispered. It sounded like my old mentor, like the anchor's data, like the creak of Mnemonics' spine. Then the crowd turned. Not individually, not like a coordinated swarm, but as a field. The overall balance of bodies shifted, so that more of them faced my direction. Their eyes were still unfocused, their faces blurry around the edges, but the combined effect was terrifying. They looked at me. The weight of their attention was physical. My knees buckled, the ground, if that's what it was, tilted. "You're new," the voice said, not in words, in pressure, in the way my bones creaked. I tried to say, "We didn't mean." "You joined," it said. Behind the crowd, Earth rose. Not in the sky, impossible, nothing so simple, but behind everything, a vast, curved presence that filled my perception. I saw continents and clouds, mountains and oceans, cities and fields and graveyards, all at once, all layered. The totality of the planet's mass, its whole history, pressing down on me from within. "We are what we are," it said, "through the movement of every stone and every step, through the falling of every body. We do not choose, we only weigh." "We tried to copy you," I whispered, "to bring your gift with us." "You did," it said. The crowd surged forward. I woke, or thought I did, with my body nailed to the bunk, not by straps, not by fear, but by sheer pressure. The artificial gravity had spiked. My chest struggled to rise. My limbs felt like lead. Around me, the compartment filled with shadows. They were clearer now, more defined. I saw the outline of a man in a suit I recognized from old family photos, a child in a school uniform, a woman in hospital scrubs. They stood around my bunk, layered on top of each other, flickering between different positions as if the universe was trying to average them. Their weight pressed through me, into the hull. "Stop," I gasped, "please." There was no malice in them. That was the worst part. They were not predators, not demons, not any kind of conscious haunting. They were patterns, repetitions of mass in motion, following their own strange logic. "We are coming with you," the not voice said. "To where?" I choked out. "Wherever you go," it replied. "We remember you now." I thought of the core, of the imprint, of the decoupling, of the way we had smeared Earth's gravitational memory into the vacuum around Mnemonic. We had taught the universe a new pattern, that of a station carrying a copy of a planet's weight far from its source. We had become part of the book. My bunk groaned. Beyond the thin wall, I heard similar groans from the rest of the hab. Sierra's muffled curse, Jin's cry, the distant, cracking sob of Commander Cade. The shadows leaned in. "You'll crush us," I whispered. "We crush ourselves," the pressure said. "You are merely smaller." And then, abruptly, the weight lessened. I could breathe again. The shadows thinned. The station's structure stopped creaking on the edge of failure. I rolled, gasping, and caught a glimpse through the small viewport by my bunk. Jupiter filled half the sky, a swirling sea of storms, its clouds lit by the distant sun. For a moment something else overlay it, a faint, translucent sphere, Earth-sized, flickering like a ghost. It wasn't real. It was only the way my brain interpreted the distortion in spacetime outside. Mnemosyne's orbit had shifted. We were no longer circling Jupiter alone. We were falling, fractionally, around an invisible twin. "The ghost planet," I murmured. The imprint of Earth's gravity had coalesced, focused by the core's frantic struggle to stabilize. It hung outside our hull, an absence shaped like a world. No mass, no air, no rock, only curvature. A planet made of the memory of where weight had once been. And we were in orbit around it. "We are coming with you," the pressure had said. We don't know what that means, not yet. Perhaps over time the imprint will spread further. Perhaps Mnemosyne will carry its ghost world outward, dragging the memory of Earth into deep space. Perhaps, one day, another station or ship will pass through this volume of distorted vacuum and feel the tug of a planet that is not there, and hear, if they know how to listen, the murmur of billions of lives etched into the curvature. Maybe that's what gravity has always done. Maybe every mass that ever existed leaves behind a ghost weight, a trail in spacetime that never fully fades. We just made it obvious. I don't know how this ends. Our supplies are finite. Our bodies are still flesh, breakable, subject to forces that do not care about our intentions. The ghosts of gravity grow more familiar by the day, and that frightens me more than their alienness ever did. Because there are moments now when I find comfort in the crowd. When a shadow walks through me and leaves behind the memory of sun on my face, or the feel of grass under my feet, or the smell of rain on pavement. When the dead I loved stand beside my bunk, not seeing me, simply repeating the last weighted steps they took. With every such moment, I feel myself softening, becoming less distinct from the pattern. We are becoming part of the weight, part of the memory. I suspect that, one day, not far from now, we will stop being observers and become entries in the book. Our bones will crumble under the accumulated pressure of 8 billion overlapping steps. Our bodies will be compressed into the curvature we helped create. And when some future explorer, some distant station or passing ship, brushes this patch of space, they will feel a tiny extra tug on their hull, a sliver of downwardness that shouldn't be there. They may dream, that night, of a narrow station with humming ribs and flickering lights, full of shadows. They may hear my voice, or think they do, in the creak of their own walls. If you are that explorer, if you are listening now, here is what I want you to know. We meant well. We wanted to bring home with us, to make the void more human. We forgot that home includes the dead. Gravity remembers everything that has ever fallen, every person who ever stood, every person who ever lay down and did not rise again. It remembers us long after the last heart stops. And now, out here, far from the blue world that made us, it remembers us still. My name is Elias Ward. This is Mnemosyne 3, the memory station. We are falling around a planet made of ghosts. Soon we will join them. End log.